This whole idea that you can't grow things in Florida over the summer is a very impoverished view of the world.
Tomorrow morning, before the sun comes up, I'll be heading to Cody Cove Farm to spend the morning with Josh Jameson. I'm hoping to come home with much more than just plants, although I'm excited about the plants too. I'm hoping to come home with a clearer vision of what this food forest can become. You. Hey, sweet girl. Over the past several months, I'd spent a lot of time simply observing the new property, trying to understand its opportunities, its challenges, and the ecosystems already taking shape. But eventually, observation has to be balanced with wisdom. Here we are. Cody Cove Farm. Look at that. And that's what brought me to Cody Cove. There's the nursery. As the sun is rising. We're here. I wasn't sure exactly what I was going to find. I knew Josh was always experimenting with unique cultivars, but I wanted to see how he approached it day to day. Hey, Josh.
Bit of a transition period right now between the spring seed crops and summer seed crops. So a lot of the beds here are kind of on their way out. One exciting thing was this big tomato trial we did.
What was the trial?
Well, this season we planted 30 some varieties of heat tolerant or tropical originating tomatoes. And we're trying to identify the very best tomatoes for home gardeners in Florida. Stuff that's resistant to the pests and diseases and also the high heat and humidity. So we planted this tomato trial late February, and we did find some really good stuff. Actually, most of this ended up being really good. It's just about July, and I'm gonna cut these sometime this week probably, but I wanted to see if there was any that held up into this. And they're just one or two. Most of what's left is not good to eat, and the plants are going down by the day. So these look real bad right now, but this is kind of part of the whole trial, is leaving them until they're crashing to see do any in fact go all the way into the summer. This one to some degree, but especially over here, this one is called Bolivian Wild. And you'll see on most of these, they're getting a really bad, I don't know if it's actually late blight now, this really aggressive foliar disease.
Oh, yeah.
But you'll see the newest growth on this Bolivian Wild does not have it, very minimal. And despite the mid-90s temps every day, it's still setting new fruit.
Mm-hmm.
And the fruit that is on here is still good eating quality, because that's another problem I find. The high heat, the fruit gets physiological problems and they don't actually ripen. So that's what we've got, a ton of half-rotted fruit from this heat. But this one's kind of special.
Yeah.
You're welcome, Matt. My big interest now is in doing some tomato breeding. So I started making hybrids of some of these with Everglades tomato. We had maybe 12 or so successes. So we'll be growing out crosses with Everglades in the future. I have found these can go into mid-July here and still produce good fruit to eat, and then they tend to crash for July and August. You can see out of all these 33, these are all Solanum lycopersicum. This is Solanum pimpinellifolium. You can see, or mostly Solanum pimpinellifolium. You can see this is still has healthy growth, new fruit, and fruit that's good to eat. There's very little left of the domestic tomatoes that are that way. So I'm really hoping with doing some crosses, we can develop some new interesting stuff with bigger fruit. Well, that's interesting.
The more time I spent with Josh, the more I realized he reminded me of a scientist, just one with soil under his fingernails.
This is our mulberry collection, or part of it. Mulberry is a fruit that I'm very interested in, or a tree I'm interested in. There's so much incredible diversity in mulberry, and it gets very little attention. Most of us can only get a couple varieties, and honestly, they're not that great. So I've been working with these quite a while. We have a collection of a lot of very long fruited types, which are hard to get, and also ones that are maybe viable for production. For selling fruit, for making jams. We have maybe 12 varieties in here right now. We've got maybe 8 more I need to try and find a spot for. Now's not the season to see the fruit, but we do have some that can actually be 5 inches long.
Wow. Like even longer than Skinner, or?
Skinner is the longest one we have, which I have pictures of it next to a tape measure at 5 inches. Something I've really found over the last few years is the importance of rootstock on mulberries.
Yes.
Nematodes or nematodes, I see your, whatever, I call them nematodes. Really a problem in this part of the state. And a lot of people, their focus has been on treating the soil. My approach, I mean, that which is perfectly fine, is to come up with ways to get rid of them. My approach is really to work towards genetics that aren't bothered by them in the first place. And the best thing is to do both. Good soil care and also resistant genetics. But I really like to try to find things that are resistant, because a lot of homeowners that we sell to are just simply not going to do any of that stuff. And by just having things that are resistant, you really avoid them. The thing that's really great with fruit trees is that you can use rootstocks, and you never even have to see the rootstock. You can use some bitter, nasty relative of a fruit that has a strong root system. You never have to deal with the undesirable traits of that tree, but you gain the advantages of its robust root system. So for mulberry, we have a rootstock that's very successful.
And I got one from you.
This tree, the green of it, that's a mulberry on a good rootstock. See, there's no visible
knots. Yeah.
knots. Let's find one that is susceptible. This one's on a moderately susceptible rootstock.
I became so OCD about contamination. Like,
Oh yeah. Well, these actually don't look bad. Well, anyway.
well, you have decent soil there too. That makes a difference.
Yeah. I want to check that
Okay.
out. But yeah, in March, April, May, we're actually hoping in the future to have events where you can come taste 20 kinds of mulberries. And you can't believe how different they taste from one to the next. Most people have not experienced the different range of flavors that come from them.
What is your favorite?
Well, it's like for what? For flavor, for the
For sweetness. I have a sweet tooth.
sweetness would be this one. This one, it has a number of different names: long white or white Pakistan, or this is a white fruit that's elongated. It is like too sweet for most people. It's like literally eating a spoonful of honey. It has no acidity, so the rest of them tend to have some acid with the sweet. This is like syrup.
I would like that.
After you eat about 10 of these, you start getting that like birthday cake feeling in your mouth. It's
Okay. A sugar high.
Yeah. I these are wonderful, and they have this cantaloupe aftertaste. Honestly, if you closed your mouth and you ate this, you might never come up with mulberry for what you're eating, because it doesn't taste anything like the typical mulberries.
Okay.
Now here's a weird one. I just got this This is from China. It's called chicken claw mulberry.
Oh, that's interesting.
And the fruit is delicious. I just got a few fruits. And you can see the graft here. That's grafted to tice. That's the rootstock we use.
Yep.
I grafted this in February or January. Nuts.
Whoa.
And when I planted this, I cut off 4 more feet of the top so it wouldn't blow over. They can, with the right rootstock, they're very robust trees. Now, this one is Turk. This is one of my favorite varieties too. Big fruit, highly, highly, highly productive. This one can also produce a summer crop after you prune it. This one has possibilities as like a commercial fruit.
What makes Cody Cove so unique?
I guess I'd leave it to others to decide if it is in fact unique, but I hope it's unique.
It is. It is.
I've kind of tried to like find covered niches that aren't really being that well covered. So there's plenty of people that focus and propagate tropical fruit, and there's plenty of people that work on vegetables for the rest of the country. But when it comes to vegetables and root crops and other edible plants that aren't fruit for this unique environment, there are plenty of people doing great work. We have Working Food, we have, all kinds of people. But it's still a fairly undeveloped kind of field. We maintain a collection of root crops here. We have at least a dozen, probably maybe 15 cassava varieties we maintain. We only offer on our website a few of those, but there's really 5 major tropical root crops. The aroids, which is taro and malanga, sweet potato, cassava, yams, and then potatoes, which are really for the wintertime here or the highland tropics. This sweet potato, you can see now it's getting eaten up by insects, which is normal this time of year. This was the result of a trial. So we grew 30 some kinds of sweet potato, and we found that this particular sweet potato was like twice as productive as the second best one. And then what we found is most of the varieties in the trial barely produced anything. And a lot of people, there's a lot of talk out there about, you have a big rampant sweet potato, but then nothing underneath. And I was having that. One year I'd do good, the next year I wouldn't. And if you go online and try to research this, too much nitrogen, not enough nitrogen, it needed to be in the ground longer, all these reasons. What I have found is the number one reason that you don't get potatoes off of sweet potato is genetics. I have found with this variety, basically if I've got a nice plant, I will have potatoes every single time, and a lot of them. This is a wonderful root crop, Vietnamese canna.
Okay. It looks like the Queensland arrowroot that I have.
It's a variety of that, a very superior, good tasting, productive variety.
It's beautiful too.
That's awesome. I got this from a local Vietnamese grower. All these tropical root crops, I mean, maybe they were out there and I didn't know about it, but you couldn't buy years ago like a named variety of cassava. It was just cassava. And in reality, it's a very diverse crop, and one variety is not the same as the next. Just like an Irwin mango is not the same thing as a Nam Doc Mai mango. So we name them. And they excite me because they're sustenance food, and they don't tend to get a whole lot of attention. These are the things we can grow here in Florida. Most people can do very well with these and actually feed themselves a calorie food. So this kind of niche of food, not just fruit, but food, vegetables, root crops, even things like, I'm interested in corn and beans and all, food. That's the niche that we're trying to fill. Again, there's other people doing great work on this, and hopefully so many people get interested in it that they greatly surpass the varieties that we've put out. This is another project to try to identify summer squash from a Cucurbita moschata. So moschata is like the Seminole pumpkin, the tropical pumpkin group. And there are parts of the world where they eat the young ones as a summer squash. So I have maybe 8 or 9 different lines of tropical summer squash that I was evaluating this season. We're in Florida, and Florida is like this peninsula that's coming out towards the tropics. So we're like pointing towards Cuba, but we're from a culture that is connected to a big landmass that's nothing like the tropics, where really today this weather is just like the tropics. We have tropical weather here for 3/4 of the year. We need to be sourcing all of our plants for our gardens not from Maine in California and Idaho, but from the Philippines, Thailand, Cuba, Africa, Malaysia. So for instance, right here, this eggplant comes from Zambia.
Oh, wow.
This pepper comes from Trinidad. This amaranth comes, which is not thriving, but that one comes from Zimbabwe. That basil comes from Nigeria. This tomato comes from the Philippines. This sweet potato comes from Taiwan. Pretty much everything in here right now. And this onion comes from Hawaii. So this whole idea that you can't grow things in Florida over the summer is a very impoverished view of the world, because that would imply that half of the world's population lives in a place where they can't grow food, where a lot of the oldest forms of agriculture in the world all come, are Papua New Guinea and, tropical South America and the Amazon and stuff. There's more things that grow in tropical environments than things that grow in cold climates. Just huge diversity of things to look at. So we really are trying, we're trying to get things from immigrants that come from tropical countries, gene banks, anything that comes from Africa, Southeast Asia, tropical Latin America, the Caribbean, India. This is the kind of stuff that we're trying to get here and see which of those can do it in Florida. Because we also do have, we also get some cool weather here, so it's not fully tropical. But we need to be like leaning into to the south, not to the north. Yep. Now, yes, we have a season where we can grow kale and all that stuff, but for the rest of the year, this whole idea of like the summer here is like the winter up north. No, we can grow more things here in the summer than we can in the winter. There's a huge diversity of edible tropical species.
If you're new to Florida gardening, what Josh just said might completely change the way you think about growing food here. For me, it landed a little differently. What struck me wasn't that Josh was telling me something I had never heard. It was hearing someone else put to words something I had been discovering in my own garden for years. The more I stopped asking, how do I grow what everyone else grows, and started asking, what actually wants to grow here, the more growing food in Florida makes sense. That is beautiful.
Well, that one is Ficus auriculata. It does make an edible fruit. I've gotten a few ripe fruits off it. It's this incredible huge leaf, but what I'm interested in is that in Vietnam, it's called va, and they cook the green fruit as a vegetable. And I've eaten that once, and it was pretty good. So I'm thinking of that as a vegetable tree.
Okay. This looks very familiar.
Chaya.
I know not to touch it because it probably has the stinging hairs.
Not too bad, but just a little bit.
This is my favorite chaya because the leaves get so big.
I did a YouTube video showcasing this, and I don't mention in that video it can sting you because I didn't know at that time. It seems to go in and out of being stinging, and it seems when the weather gets cool and dry is especially when it's more stinging. The way we deal with it is if you just grab like this and you don't touch the edges of the leaves, those stings are all on the perimeter there.
Okay.
And they cook off, so it's...
And you do have to cook chaya.
Yep.
At least, 5 or 10 minutes on a good boil.
Yep.
And not in aluminum.
Right. Yep. You don't got to be afraid of it, but
yeah.
Pair of scissors and grabbing it like this goes a long way. And the sap of this variety is much more caustic. So if you get that sap on your forearm, it's pretty irritating. So you just got to be a little cautious.
Yeah. Okay. The sap has never bothered me. It's just I don't like the latex, sticky feeling.
This one is a chaya we call Marabou because it came from my friend Marabou. And I think he picked it up out of the trash. It was a Mexican family had thrown it like cuttings up by for the trash to pick up. And I think he found it that way or something like that. Huh. So maybe he had a unique variety from Mexico.
And does it sting?
I have not been stung by this one. But I think a lot of them, they have it in them to every blue moon throw out some stings, but they typically don't. This one has not stung me yet, though.
And Tindora, is it true I read that you need a male variety and a female?
To get viable seed, which you don't want to do. This one will set fruit without the seed, the seed doesn't sprout, which is good because this is like a real bad weed. Yeah. Okay. In Southeast Asia too. Well, so in India they eat the fruits, but in Southeast Asia they eat this. I have another cucumber alternative that I'm more excited about than these.
Oh, really?
But these are an interesting thing. Yeah, we could go see it if you want to see it. It's amazing.
Okay.
Yeah.
They both thrive in our summer heats, right?
It is right now. Like, the heat is like a war of attrition on plants. So some things can kind of keep going into early July, but then the day after day after day after day of humid and rain can slow, like August and September, a little bit of a different story than early June and July. This is the West Indian burgerkin, Cucumis anguria. This is one of the most productive things that we grow. It's like shockingly easy to grow. And these are really a lot like a cucumber. That's when you eat it like a cucumber. You can also cook them when they're a little bigger, like a summer squash. These are still maybe cucumber size, but they're approaching cooking as a summer squash size. They farm these in Brazil as a summer squash. They cook them. It's called machiche in Portuguese.
Delicious.
We were saving all the seeds, so we're letting all these ripen up to color. I've got 5-gallon vats of these fermenting in the house right now. You ferment them to save the seed. There's literally thousands of these cucumbers in here.
Whoa.
Supposedly this is a really good pickle because it's a little more firm than a cucumber. And Thomas Jefferson, I guess, grew these for pickles.
Oh.
Yeah, and it seems to not really be affected by nematodes too much because it just keeps going. So I'm sure if I pull it up, I'd see damage, but it can outpace it. That's something. Some things are not nematode resistant, but they're vigorous enough that new roots are replacing the old infected roots and they outpace the infection. You know, this is that whole mindset shift of like, you could force yourself to grow Cucumis sativus, cucumber, because we eat cucumbers, and then spraying and all this treatments and netting them and on and on and on. Or you could just grow something that's pretty similar, adjust your taste buds a little bit, and you don't have any of that, and you just pick them and eat them. So if I had planted cucumber next to this, it would have been long dead, months ago. Cucumbers are hard, but these are just, I don't
So
spray
easy.
these or anything. They're just, we've got to stick to this tropical stuff that actually likes this weather. This stuff doesn't tolerate the weather. It likes this weather, and that's the difference. Well, this is a breeding project. It's a trombocino, which is like a zucchini. We crossed with, or I didn't do it. A friend crossed it with Seminole pumpkin, and we're growing out and trying to stabilize a Seminole pumpkin that you eat like a zucchini.
Nice.
So every seedling was very different, and we're evaluating and working on that.
Earlier this year, I ordered some plants from Cody Cove. And because of a software glitch, the order never went through. Then Josh called me personally. He apologized. And he went above and beyond making it right. Instead of shipping the order, he drove the order here to this property. And I got to show him around. When you came over, was there anything that you remember that you saw and you go, oh, David needs to pay attention to this?
Well, I'm so used to being on a lot of space now that it's not a small space probably by a lot of people's standards, because a lot of people watching this probably somewhere in the city. But to me, I was like, what would I plant if I only had this?
Yeah. Right.
So I guess just being smart with variety choices, especially with trees. If you got a small space and you're gonna plant, say, a mango, you got 500 kinds to choose from. Choose a good one. Choose a productive one and one that you like. Not to you, but to the viewers. Just make smart choices, especially about long-term stuff.
Yeah.
Things that are more short-term, like papayas and things, whatever. But with trees, it pays off to do your homework. I've got plenty of duds I wish I kind of hadn't eaten up the space with. Then once it gets big, you don't want to cut it. So
I actually like the challenge of, because my property is probably about 1/4 of an acre, maybe a little more. And I kind of like the challenge to see how much I can grow and to show people how much you can actually grow.
with trees, there's the whole logic of planting things very close. But the thing to remember is that fruit trees, most of them bear on the outer canopy, other than things that are coniferous like jaboticaba or jackfruit. And it's really where sunlight is hitting the leaves is where you get fruit. So if you plant things in a really crowded way and you're not doing any canopy management, trees will begin to grow together. And then you're starting to get more towards a forest with less food. I want a lot of food with a little bit of forest. Really, on a lot of the fruit trees, to be able to have sunlight hitting the entire canopy is how you're going to ensure that the fruit is low. Yes, you can have trees crowding and you're going to have a lot of fruit way up high. They're hazardous to harvest or they're smashing on the ground. You can't bag them. You can't control the squirrels and rats and everything else. You can't manage the trees. If you're going to jam things in, either use really dwarf varieties, have a plan to prune, or fill in all that space with herbaceous species in the meantime. Papaya, cassava, sweet potato, bananas, with a plan to phase those out. And for the long haul, to have the trees set at a space that's good for you. There's exceptions to this, but trees grow big, and a lot of them grow bigger than people anticipate. And then before you know it, you've got this big crowded thicket, and now you're to more of a forest and less of a food forest. But anyway, I mean, that's just my thought is I like to pick fruit from my standing height, not with a way up, and
So keep the fruit trees to a manageable size.
Manageable size.
And they can get unmanageable very easily if you don't watch it.
Yep. Like, sapodilla, if you want to have the most diversity of fruit, you can really choose the dwarf varieties. Silaswood, sapodilla, pickering, mango, Wirtz, avocado, these really compact varieties allow you to have more diversity in a smaller space. Or pruning methods as well, which is a little more involved.
Over the next few days, I kept replaying this conversation in my mind. And the more I thought about it, the more I realized Josh wasn't just recommending specific fruit trees. He was encouraging me to think differently about this property. I went back the following weekend, and there was one particular tree I had in mind to bring home. This Pickering mango. As Josh mentioned, it's a dwarf variety, and for this property, it just made a lot of sense rather than just trying to fit another full-size tree on this property. And then over here, we had already planned to remove this part of the driveway long before we bought this house. And so what Josh said reinforced why that extra space matters. And it's not about fitting in more trees. It's more about fitting the right trees into a space where they can thrive. Look, and I'll still grow a couple of full-size fruit trees, but most of my choices will be far more intentional. And I'm not ruling out grafting a couple of cocktail mango trees. I want to have an early variety, a late variety grafted to that tree, or maybe a couple of mango trees with a number of varieties on it.
Yeah, smart. Yeah, for people watching, the thing to know, if you're going to have multiple mangoes grafted to one tree, if you can match the vigor of the varieties, you'll have a lot more success long term. Like dwarfs with dwarfs or hyper vigor with hyper vigor. Because if you have a hyper vigor with a not vigorous tree, the vigorous one's going to slowly want to swallow out the other variety. And now we're into the mangoes. We have maybe 40 or so varieties of mango. The way it's planted down here is there's things in between the mango rows and then in between the mango trees to maximize the space while the mangoes mature. Not too long, this is going to, 5 years from now, this will pretty much just be mangoes and all this other stuff is going to have to go. So every tree is a different variety for the most part. The only one we have multiples of there is Pickering, which is a dwarf variety that's real productive and clean fruit. Everything else is one variety of each or one tree of each variety. We kind of have them organized: Southeast Asian mangoes, Indian mangoes, new fancy Zill mangoes, and then these are all wild mangoes and wild species, mango relatives. And this one's actually a cross of a mango relative with a mango. You can see it's got these real unique purple leaves.
I love when on social media they're like, "What's wrong with my mango tree?"
Looks perfectly good to me. These are late season mangoes. So these are the August, September mangoes. And we also have a row up there of real early ones, late May. So you can have them for almost 5 months here. The little baby bunny. See, that's why there's a cage around that tree. That cute little guy will decide it likes eating bark. And I've lost mango trees to those. Hey guy. I can't keep under these weeds under control by myself. This is an excellent fruit tree more people should have. Tropical jujube. It's like an apple.
Jujube?
Mm-hmm. Ziziphus martiana, which is the tropical one. And this froze to the ground, and this is since the freeze, and it's blooming. And this is a winter-bearing fruit. It's very much like an apple.
Is there anything that you would have done differently if you were to start over here?
The things I would want to do differently, I think I'm still doing wrong, because I'm just the diversity and new things is what interests me, and maybe it's like a pathological kind of thing for me, but I get bored of things I've already figured out, so I'm not good at maintaining the varieties that people still want that are old news to me. I'm always, this is all new stuff.
By this point, a pattern was becoming impossible to miss. Curiosity shaped everything Josh did, from the plants he chose to the soil.
We are located here on the Lake Wales Ridge, which is really, really coarse sand. It's some of the worst soils in the US because there are large grains of sand that are very puffy and dry and infertile. So to overcome that, what we've come up with is these beds, and we're able to fill these in with whatever we want. So we use some local red clay, which is very affordable and an easy way to increase the moisture content in the beds. And we bring in compost, and then we do use some of the native soil. So we've got these beds where pretty much everything we set in really thrives, and we can do a lot better with our seed production and stuff. The clay, it doesn't just hold water, it breaks up the way that the sand is naturally hydrophobic. And I think it kind of changes the cation exchange capacity a little bit, so you get better nutrient holding as well. This is something I've started doing with passion fruit, is these self-fertile passion fruits, you can just grow them up a tree and they fall on the ground. Not all of them you can do that with. Some you have to be able to reach the flowers, but rather than having to grub up all these big roots when I plant, I started cutting the bottom out of a big pot, and I just put it there and fill it up with good soil. And then it can get set, and it'll go down, and you can get this really nice big vine going up a tree.
Any special mix in this pot? Or
just sand, compost, and some of that red clay. That's kind of my go-to.
Well, we have no red clay further south.
Down, you mean in Sebring?
Yeah. Or South Florida.
We don't have, it's like 10, 20 feet down, and they dig it out.
Okay.
There's clay mines down by you.
Okay.
Near Sebring.
Red clay. That was one rabbit trail I was not expecting to go down. I do have a feeling that I will be exploring the use of red clay a lot more in the coming months. But that idea was not the only thing I brought home from Cody Cove, of course. Yes, I came home with plants. Quite a few, actually. Some were fruit trees, and others were root crops. And many were plants I had never considered before meeting Josh. I went on this journey hoping to come home with a clearer vision of what this food forest could become. And I did. I came home thinking differently about the trees I choose, the space they'll need, and the vegetables that want to grow here. Even something simple as soil. One thing I've learned over the years is that none of us really have everything figured out. Not me, not Josh, not anyone. We're all observing, experimenting, and learning. So if you've been using red clay in your Florida garden, I'd love for you to share your experience in the comments. I have a feeling that we'll all learn something from the discussion. Because if this visit to Cody Cove reminded me of anything, it's that the best gardeners never stop learning. Follow the journey and let's grow together.